All right, y'all did it. You got me riled up. Here we go. This wasn't the plan, but whatever. We're doing this. Hey everybody, Spartan Bodie here, and yes, can you see my breath? I don't know. It's really cold here. Taking a little break, I'm sidetracking just a little bit. I had some stuff this week, and didn't fully commit to getting this video ready, so we're gonna push the backgrounds and backstory video. That's all gonna happen next week. However, I wanted to give you guys a little something, so we're still doing that, and then I was on Facebook today and saw something, and I just need to address it. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. I'm a part of a group. It's this nerdy group. Maybe I should start with this. I was a youth and worship pastor for over 6 years, and yeah, I believe in Jesus. I think he's kind of awesome. A lot of my beliefs have changed, especially over the last 3 or 4 months. I've been asking a lot of questions, and I'm unsure of a lot of things. It's kind of just where I'm at. I think God has grace for that. I hope you can too. Maybe you can relate. If so, I have space for you here. Hopefully there's space for me. In the same breath, I used Dungeons & Dragons as a way to minister in my community. It was a great way to get certain kids involved that weren't necessarily just going to come to church because we were ringing the dinner bell. And no, it wasn't an evangelism tool. It was more so just hey, let's hang out and grow to be friends. That ended up blossoming into some amazing opportunities to just kind of share life stories with the people that I was responsible for. And I don't regret any of it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But yeah, I used Dungeons & Dragons to minister. And that did raise a couple of eyebrows, mostly because people don't quite understand. See, several decades ago, something called the Satanic Panic gripped American evangelicalism and pretty much rocked it to its core. It certainly inspired a lot of fear-mongering and pushed a lot of people away from things that really had no business being labeled the way that they were. Dungeons & Dragons was one of those things. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Gary Gygax was a Christian and ultimately just wanted to play a tabletop version of Lord of the Rings. He loved the story and wanted to play with his friends. So he and several of his buddies got together and started writing the rules that eventually became the first edition of D&D. Anyway, this is just a little bit off topic from what I was really wanted to discuss today. In this nerdy group that I'm a part of, a question was asked by a member. Questions about D&D. Hubby and I were thinking of starting. We've had the game for years unopened. Question number 1. Are there any play modifications to make the game more Christian-friendly? Question mark. And 2 doesn't apply, so we're not going to worry about 2. We're going to focus on question number 1. Are there any play modifications to make the game more Christian-friendly? And the answer is, you don't really need them. There are several things that the Satanic Panic honed in on to say that D&D was evil in the first place. The biggest one that I can make out is the use of magic. Even though we're not covering magic yet, I'll go ahead and explain a little bit about it in the D&D system. There is nothing in the book that explains how to cast these spells. All the rules point to is what's needed for your character to cast the spell. It gives you no language to actually do any kind of witchcraft or magic in the first place. So no, there aren't any incantations in the book. All it's going to provide you is the knowledge of you need to have somatic movements, correct verbal components, or material components to pull the magic and put it out into the world. That's it. And then the PHB describes what the magical effect is. Again, there is no way you could ever learn any kind of magic from this game. And even then, I'm not convinced that you're going to be able to cast magic anyway. I could be wrong. There's a lot I don't know. But I have personally never cast an actual fireball spell in real life. But using my imagination to cast one, that was super cool. So don't let the fact that magic exists in this world scare you off. In fact, magic exists in a bunch of different stories that Christians have really honed in on. The Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia. Gandalf is a wizard. He uses magic. Though rarely, he uses magic, and yet ends up being a wonderful example of Christ-like behavior, sacrificing himself to save everyone else. I've heard that story before somewhere. Or the Chronicles of Narnia. There are many different creatures that have magical components to them. Talking animals? Hello! My point is, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were not afraid to use magic as a form of drama. It's exciting, it's entertaining, it gets our imaginations rolling. And we don't fault our children for believing that magic tricks are real. They're awesome. Of course, we always wonder, how did they do that? That was amazing. thing. Anyway, I'm sidetracking myself again. My next point. There were many comments attached to this thread that was talking about reinventing the religious system of the game entirely. I don't think you need to do that. Now, I'm actually not taking my own advice. I'm creating a pantheon of gods for my D&D world, but I'm still using multiple different gods for different things. It makes sense for the story that I'm telling, and I'm not going to get into too many spoilers, so don't hold your breath, but it's actually a lot more accurate than what you would think. If you are a person who professes the Christian faith, then you've probably heard of the Ten Commandments somewhere. It's found in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus, and they are the first of the 613 laws passed down from God to Moses and then eventually to the Israelites as they are being given their new laws for how they are to act and live under God's leadership. And in the Ten Commandments, it talks about having no other gods before God himself. If I'm reading that right, that doesn't mean there are no other gods than God himself. It means you will not serve another god before God himself. So according to the Old Testament, there are many gods. And ultimately, Judaism is all about proving that the God of the Israelites is the best God. So you might be thinking, well, Bodhi, if you're saying that, then maybe I shouldn't serve a false god in a D&D game. Are you really, though? Your character might be, but you're not your character. You're making choices for your character. You get to pretend to be your character. What you do in the game matters, sure, but remember, we're telling a story together. This isn't real you making those decisions. In fact, you might want to consider it as you being an actor. In my undergrad, I minored in theater, and one of the things I took away from my professor, Dr. Kathy Parker, was in our theater and religion class. We talked about plays throughout the ages, from the Dark Ages and the medieval era all the way through to now in our depiction of good and evil. One of the questions that came up was, is it wrong for us to portray an evil character? Is it wrong for us to be a villain? And chiefly in one circumstance, would it be wrong to portray what Christians would believe to be the greatest villain of all time, Satan himself? And the answer, as I recall, and still believe to this point, was no, it wasn't wrong. It wasn't sinful. Just because you're portraying something doesn't mean you are that thing. And in fact, if we could never allow ourselves to portray anything, then where's the drama? How do we learn? In fact, Dr. Parker told us theater is a safe place to experience that which is not safe. I think D&D can do the exact same thing. Perhaps you need a better example. Maybe you remember this character. This is the portrayal of Satan in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Who is this person, you might ask? Well, her name is Rosalinda Celentano, and she's an Italian actress. And if you look her up on IMDb, the role it says she's probably best known for is Satan from The Passion of the Christ. Now, I want you to ask yourself, do you think that she's in danger of going to hell for portraying Satan in a movie that is meant to inspire and create emotional responses to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? I really hope you don't think that God would judge someone to hell for portraying Satan just to provide an immersive experience for someone who is going to the theater to watch how they believe Jesus Christ was crucified 2,000 some years ago. If you are, then maybe we need to be having a different conversation than, is it wrong for me to play D&D? I'm trying not to get preachy here. I really am not. I want you to feel free to play this game. As I said in my very first video, I had some wonderful conversations about faith and real life and struggle and all of the things that make us human. These conversations were deep and lasted hours after we had stopped rolling dice on the table together. I can understand some of the fear and trepidation about making a bad decision or doing the wrong thing. But for the reasons I've presented to you here, I really don't think that D&D is a dangerous game. You're not committing a sin by pretending to be someone who follows a god that is not your god. You're putting this person on and taking them off for just a short time. It's pretend. Fantasy. That fantasy can teach us all a lot if we allow it the room to. So dear concerned Christian, friend, it's okay. It's okay. All that aside, the other thing I wanted to provide with this week's content is just a playlist. After this video, you'll see a bunch of others of different songs that I use to immerse myself in character creation. That was the original plan for this week. Hey, I'll give them some of my favorite music to listen to so they can create their own characters. And now you have that opportunity. But I kind of just wanted to get that out there. I read that, it got me thinking. I just wanted you to feel the freedom to pursue this game if that was a holdup for you. So, thanks for watching. If you agree with me, cool, let's talk about it. If you disagree with me, great, let's talk about it. The last thing this world needs is more polarization and people throwing things at each other from across the aisle. Let's open up a real dialogue. If I've said something that concerns you, let's chat about it. Your questions are always welcome here. As always, thank you so much for coming along. And adventure's calling. Are you listening?